people yet again. Here with reaction to this and much more is Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, thanks for being with us. What should the response be from your perspective?
Well, Secretary Kerry is right that Assad's using chemical weapons is an outrage and it's wrong. But unfortunately, missing from his statement and from the president's approach so far has been a focus on what the touchstone should be, which is the vital U.S. national security interest of this country. The United States Armed Forces doesn't exist to be a policeman for the world, and I certainly hope the reaction isn't simply lobbing some cruise missiles in to disagree with Assad's murderous actions. Rather, our focus should be on protecting our national security, which leads to two things. Number one, under no circumstances should we be arming rebels who are affiliated with al-Qaeda. And this administration has already suggested they want to arm the rebels with no reliable means of differentiating al-Qaeda from non-al-Qaeda. And number two, our concern should be those chemical weapons, preventing them from falling into the hands of Hezbollah, preventing them from falling into the hands of al-Qaeda. That should be guiding our actions, not expressing some moral outrage from a university faculty lounge.
All right, yeah, anybody's saying it's a moral obscenity, yeah, we agree. It's inexcusable, yeah, we agree. Sure. But you mentioned firing some cruise missiles. That's been the talk, that they're drawing up plans to do so. Is this going to be a so-called therapeutic bombing so they can just check off the box? They crossed the red line and we responded, but that's it?
Look, if the objective is to make a symbolic step, then that makes sense. If the objective is to protect our national security, it's difficult to see what a few cruise missiles would do. The focus should be the only justifiable reason for U.S. military forces to be engaged, for U.S. military might to be engaged, is to protect our national security. And sadly, that has been the missing variable from this administration's approach from the beginning, as they allowed Assad to slaughter over 100,000 of his people, and their focus hasn't been on protecting U.S. interests. And you know what's striking, Sean, is that Secretary Kerry and the President have said they want to go to the United Nations for approval. How about going to the United States Congress? You know, the Constitution gives Congress the authority to declare war, and this President doesn't seem to view it as remotely a priority to go to Congress to make the case why any military action is in our national security, and I think that's his responsibility to do.
Do you think the President has an obligation at this point to do that before any attack takes place?
I think the President has an obligation to make the case to Congress and the American people why any military action, if there is to be any, is justified and why it's focused on U.S. national security. What it shouldn't be is just a symbolic gesture of disapproval. It should rather be focused on protecting citizens of America.
As we saw in the Arab Spring, as the president himself helped push Mubarak out, they never saw the Muslim Brotherhood coming. Now, if we look, I think the larger question has got to be here. Who's going to replace Assad, number one, and number two, the Syrian opposition, which was more secular and more pro-American, has now given way to the pro-jihadist movement. Isn't it more likely that if Assad is cast aside, that the Islamic jihadist al-Qaeda ties take over with al-Qaeda ties?
Now, look, that's exactly right. Of 9 major rebel groups, 7 of them may well have some significant ties to al-Qaeda. And, you know, if Assad is toppled and replaced by a radical Islamist regime, what would be truly dangerous for the United States, for our allies like Israel and Jordan, is for a radical Islamic government to seize control of those chemical weapons and to deploy them against us or our allies. That should be the focus of the president. And as we've seen throughout the Middle East, that has not been the focus of the president. You know, Sean, it was striking when the protests were occurring in Egypt against the Muslim Brotherhood that the protesters were waving banners that said President Obama supports Morsi. The United States supports the radical Islamic government that's oppressing us. What a sad state of affairs when the United States is arm in arm with oppressive Islamist governments.
We've had a 30-month civil war. Over 100,000 Syrians are dead. We've got many more displaced. And it seems we've gotten to the point where our allies don't trust us and our enemies don't fear us. When you heard Vladimir Putin's comments, what did you take from that? I took from it he doesn't care what Obama thinks.
Well, sadly, that has been the pattern across the world. Look, if there's one principle that has proved true from time immemorial, it's that bullies and tyrants don't respect weakness. And our friends have sadly grown to learn that the United States, under this president, has not been a resolute ally. And our enemies have learned that under this president, there is little to fear. And the most dangerous escalation from this is Assad's patron in Iran, which is only seeing these occurrences as further encouragement to continue to develop nuclear weapons, which I think would pose an enormous national security threat to the United States.
You and Senator Rand Paul, Senator Mike Lee, and Senator Rubio have been involved in this effort to defund Obamacare. The more establishment Republican Party has come out pretty strongly dead set against it. You said the only way it will happen is if a grassroots tsunami takes place in Washington. What are you looking for?
Look, that's exactly right. Let me tell you, Sean, we're getting real momentum. You know, there's a national website, don'tfundit.com, don'tfundit.com. It's got, as of a few minutes ago, 578,000 signatures on it. Every time in the past few weeks I've gone on Fox News, we've seen another 10, 20,000 signatures. You know, I feel confident with the Hannity viewers and the loyal passion they have for freedom that by the end of this show we can break 600,000. If we keep...
Go ahead. Well, to me, this is a deal killer, because if the Republicans don't stand, I appreciate the symbolic votes, but this is the real is the real deal this time.
Absolutely.
If they don't stand for it, I don't see a difference between the Republicans and the Democrats, frankly.
Well, you know, sadly, Sean, there is one difference, which is right now the people fighting the hardest against defunding Obamacare are Republicans. You haven't seen Democrats on your show fighting against us. Why? Because the Republicans are all shooting at those who are trying to work with the grassroots to stop this disaster of a bill that is killing jobs, that's driving up insurance rates, that's hurting the American people.
I agree.
How do we win? First, we get 41 Republicans in the Senate to stand together and 218 Republicans in the House. That's number one. And the only way to do that is to get millions of Americans to go to don'tfundit.com and hold our elected officials accountable. But second, once millions of Americans are energized, they in turn can hold Democrats accountable. You know, if you're a red state Democrat, if you're up for election, say in Arkansas and Louisiana, and you start getting calls from 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 or 50,000 of your constituents, suddenly the calculus looks very, very different. But
yeah, no, I agree with you. Let me ask one last question, because we're just running out of time, Senator, and I want to get this in. I know a lot has been made of the fact that your birth certificate, and I guess you've renounced your Canadian citizenship, but it's not an issue for me. But it's interesting how many Democrats do not want you to get in the race for the presidency. Let me play for you the comments of Howard Dean and get your response.
Ted Cruz may be a very good politician, but he certainly doesn't know anything about health care. These are crazy ideas that are from the far right. He's a slick spokesman, and God help us if he ever does get to be anything more than the senator from Texas.
God help us if he ever won. But I want you to respond. What's your reaction, and what is your alternative that you're offering?
Oh, look, there are Democrats that can choose to throw whatever rocks they want. And unfortunately, Governor Dean's approach is he likes a one-size-fits-all approach from Washington. What I think makes sense is we should empower patients. What he was responding to there is that I was saying that Americans should be able to buy insurance across state lines in all 50 states. So we have a national marketplace that gives patients choice and the ability to get low-cost, catastrophic care. We should be empowering patients, not putting government bureaucrats between patients and their doctors. And sadly, that has been the approach of President Obama and Governor Dean and Nancy Pelosi, is to put Washington in the middle of the doctor's office between you and your doctor. It doesn't work. It's hurting the American people. And that's why the American people are rising up, going to don'tfundit.com and saying, stop this train wreck. Let's get jobs back.
All right, Senator, I support the effort. I hope more Republicans join on. Appreciate it. Thank you for being with us.